Hi, everybody. Welcome to the session about building your first model in Dataiku as part of Dataiku Product Days 2024. My name is Walid Alcara. I am a sales engineer at Dataiku based out of New York City, and I'll be your host for the day. For the agenda today, I want to go over a Dataiku platform overview for those of you who are new to Dataiku or haven't seen Dataiku in a while. This will be a good reminder of what the platform does, who it serves, and how we go about doing these things. Next, I'll give a use case introduction so that we can actually dig into the use case we'll be leveraging in order to do that first model build in the platform. And then finally, we'll hop over into Dataiku. We'll do a live demo, and that will be the majority of the portion today. For the Dataiku platform overview, first, I want to kind of point out what we do here within the Dataiku platform. The first step is to connect to all of your data sources, whether those are cloud-based data sources, whether they're platforms like Databricks or Snowflake, whether they're on-prem data sources. It doesn't matter to Dataiku. We'll help you connect to all those data sources to enable you as the user to leverage any of those data sets that live internally or externally for your model builds. Once your data is connected, you'll see here we serve the general spectrum of low code to full code. So we help anyone from data and ML engineers, data scientists, to data analysts, and even business analysts to be able to run those data analytics or machine learning projects in the platform. In order to do that, we have a very adaptive infrastructure. We always talk about Dataiku being infrastructure agnostic. That means that we can leverage any one of the compute engines that exist today. Again, whether those are some of the larger cloud compute clusters like Amazon Redshift, or we're looking at NVIDIA for GenAI types of use cases. Those are all compute engines that we can leverage inside of Dataiku. And when you are looking at doing those GenAI use cases, we can also connect to any one of those GenAI foundational models. Once you build these projects in Dataiku, we like to think about them as not just building science experiments, but actually building projects that are leverageable by the rest of the organization, driving adoption and driving value out of the projects that you build. For that, you need a seamless productionalization and orchestration model, and that's what we have inside of the platform. So deploying those projects, monitoring them over time, making sure that they are running as they should be in production is something that we can do here. You see a persona called the operations manager. This is really sort of starting to tackle that governance framework inside of the platform. And in order to make sure that all of these metrics and compliance metrics, et cetera, are met, we also add a sort of control risk manager. Think about it as a governance manager overall. And we build all of those different projects inside of the platform in order to create things like applications or visualizations out of the data that is pushed out of Dataiku. You might even push that data directly to third-party BI platforms like Tableau and Power BI, or you might push that into custom applications leveraging the APIs inside of the platform. The goal is always the same. It's to drive adoption and value for your end users from the Dataiku platform. Let's talk a little bit about the use case we're going to cover today. We're going to use a prediction of customer churn today. So we'll use some sort of web data. Think about it as a e-commerce platform data that we're going to leverage for the project. And in order to build your first machine learning model, we tailored these down to a few simple steps. First, it's data selection and ingestion. So identifying what my training data looks like, what potential enrichment data I might leverage. So think of enrichment data as external data that's here to add context to your internal historical data. And then we're also going to be able to or have to find your new data that you want to score. Thinking of that as once you build that model, you want to always be scoring new data coming in, essentially putting the model to work and extracting that value out of it. Once you have your data in the platform, we're going to tackle exploratory data analysis. And by no means is this a sort of one-dimensional step. We're going to be consistently doing some exploratory data analysis. We'll talk about it as EDA. It's really how you understand your data. And at every step of the process, you might want to take a step back and visualize your data, run statistics on that data that you're creating, in order to make sure that you are building for the right reasons. Next, we're going to look at feature generation. What that means is we're going to essentially create new columns out of your source data that allows us to increase the signal being sent into any machine learning model. So we'll see examples of what those look like. Think about this as starting with someone's date of birth and extracting from that the age. And that's going to be a feature that we create that our model is going to be able to leverage. That age speaks a lot more to the model than a simple date of birth. And that's the whole goal here. Once we have all the data ready for modeling, we're going to jump right into modeling. That is testing many different models to identify the right one for our particular use case. Every model can have different trade-offs, and so we're going to talk about what that potentially means to select the best model for the job. And then finally, we'll look at what it means to deploy that model into the Dataiku workflow, allowing you to consistently score new data coming into the platform as we push this to production and have this run, let's say, once a week, once a month, whatever that looks like for your company. Awesome. We're going to hop right into the demo here. And for the demo, I've kind of split my project into different states. So you'll see me jump around different tabs. We are going to cover all of those steps. Some of these steps have been pre-calculated just to save us some time, but you'll see the entire end-to-end flow that we highlighted in that earlier slide. Going into the first step, it's connecting your data. And inside of the platform, we make it really easy to grab any data source that your IT department or data governance managers have provided you with as an end user. So here you can see I can browse all the data sources that are available to me. You can also just simply drag and drop offline data or local data into the flow. And that's what I've done here just for simplicity's sake. I can even preview this just to start doing that exploratory data analysis here and understanding what data I'm working with, what do these data sets look like, do some of these fit together, do I have to join these data sets, so on and so forth. I can get a little bit more detailed as well. If I jump into an actual data set, I can view here some of the data quality aspects. So thankfully, all of my data is available, or it's all looking healthy. And that's why I see this full green bar. Otherwise, I would be notified. Some things I might want to do here is a quick analysis of this column. Customer ID should be a unique value, and I can see at least on this sample that that's the case. So that tells me I have good data or good data quality coming in. I can get an understanding here of what the pages visited looks like. You can see a nice bell curve here. Those are all things that you might want to start doing. You might know this data really well and skip this step, or this might be the first time you're looking at this data, in which case this would be a helpful way of visualizing it just to get started. Now, I have this data in the beginning of the flow. What I want to start doing is shaping it to create one large table that's going to be that input for my machine learning model. In this particular case, what I need to do is join my historical data together. So I have web data coming in here. I have CRM data here. And by joining these two data sets together, I can get a full picture of all of my customers. That is some of the data that lives in my CRM, as well as data on their purchases, for example, coming through my website. To do that, we're going to go ahead and join. We'll leave these default settings as is, and we're going to pick the type of join. Of all the different types of joins are available to me. I only want to see customers that match in two of my data sets, that is customers who've actually purchased something with me this year. So for that, I can go ahead and hit an inner join, and we're going to add a condition. Dataiku will usually take a stab here at what that join condition looks like. That is exactly what these two data sets join on. So we'll go ahead and hit OK. And then from a data selection, sort of output shaping, what we want to do here is make sure that we're selecting all the right columns. So I'm going to go ahead and manually override this just to see what this all looks like. In this particular case, I do want all of my data coming in from web last year as a data set, although I do not need to regenerate that customer ID. It exists in this original data set, so we're going to go ahead and skip that particular step here. Now, while that job is running, we can sort of see what we've built here just to make sure that this all looks right, and that's the case. So I have my two historical data sets that are being joined together, and we're going to create this final data set. And now you can see I have a more full picture of my customer data, and this is going to start helping me to go into this next step of feature generation. So things we'll look at are IP address, for example. IP address is great, but without extracting context or additional information from this, it might be useless to my model. So what we're going to do is turn this into actual city, states, country information that might help me. We talked about birth date as an example. This we're going to turn into an age, because it's more helpful for me to bin my customers by age rather than know their true date of birth. Once I get here, again, we can keep talking about exploratory data analysis. So as I've now shaped this data set up, one thing I can do, for example, is take a look at, maybe I want to see the average of pages visited by campaign. So I have a marketing campaign in here. Did my campaign influence the number of pages my customers visited on my website? And it seems to actually be just a slight increase here, but it seems like it's almost an even keel for my campaign. Now, moving into the second step, you'll see a few more steps have been completed here. One thing that we're going to do is we've now joined our country GDP data set. This is an enrichment data set, so we've added yet again some more context. We have country information, and then we have the GDP per capita for those particular countries. That's going to be think about it as like the consumer price index. This is going to help me understand how likely my customers are to churn. This might be a signal that will help my model. We'll actually go ahead and find out once we do our model training if that's the case. Going into this prepare recipe, we'll take a look here at what's been done. We talked about the date of birth, changing the date of birth into an age. And in order to do that, Dataiku helps you with a lot of pre-built functions. So activating just that single one, for example, just so you see the impact of these. You can see if I have an unparsed date, which you're seeing within this birth column, Dataiku helps us expedite the process of parsing this date out into a standardized format by simply going ahead and clicking through the different suggestions. So this is a neat way of expediting that process. And then if you look at some of the other aspects here, we're doing some cleanup. We don't need the birth date anymore. In essence, we really just need that age. We are computing then the difference between that birth date and today. So every time I run this pipeline, we're going to have the most up-to-date age. And that's how I know that I'm making sure that we're adding important signal to the model. Now you're starting to see why Dataiku is a powerful platform for both data analyst teams as well as data science teams alike. For data analyst teams, for analytics in general, Dataiku can help expedite the process of getting to your end result, whether that's an analytical data set or actually going through Dataiku as an upskilling platform to allow your data analyst to actually get access to machine learning tools, as you'll see when we start building the model. And then for data science teams, you'll see one of the key values that we unlock is the ability to expedite their process, make every data scientist more productive and able to get to their modeling step as quickly as possible. What we're going to do here is we're going to create one more feature. And what I want to do is I want to generate a binary value for my GDP. So if GDP is greater than the value of 40,000, we're going to call it high GDP cap is 1. So it is high. And if not, we're going to copy this value over here, and we're going to call it 0. And if I go ahead and hit apply here, we should see this pop up on my right-hand side. So this is a preview of this. I haven't applied it to my data set, but you can see just how quickly you can get moving in the Dataiku platform. We'll go ahead and hit run. And this will now allow us to go back into our flow. Again, now you've seen how we've gone from core internal input data. We've added some enrichment data. We've joined all of this back together, and now we have a complete data set that is ready for modeling. Once we're ready for modeling, what we actually want to do here is we know that we have a target variable. In other words, the column that we want to apply a machine learning model to, and that is churn. And from here, the way I can quickly move into prediction modeling is through the following shortcut. So selecting that column, go ahead and hit create prediction model on my given target variable. And the great thing about Dataiku is, again, no matter your skill set and no matter where you start, you can end up in the same location. So if you are a data science team and you want to go right ahead into writing your own models, or you're more of a data analyst persona getting into modeling for the first time, or really you're just trying to move quickly and build your first couple of prototypes in order to see if this is maybe a machine learning worthy model, then you have somewhere you can start. We're going to go ahead with the quick prototypes. I will create this step here, and we'll go ahead and hit train. This is now Dataiku taking its sort of default AutoML approach at building my first 2 models, as it's highlighting over here. I will hit train, and while that's running, we'll go into a more complete version of that view. This is this is going to highlight here all of the models that we've built, or all the different experiments that we've tried. You'll see we have different models have been used in every one of these sessions. Every session is an experiment. Every experiment contains a set of variables and parameters that you as a user have control over changing. Again, Dataiku always has some suggestions that it's going to provide you with, but we can see here, for example, under my design tab, how we get through doing this. And that's simply by selecting your target variable, which you can see here, identifying how you want to address your training and testing data set splits. Dataiku, again, can help you understand this. And what's really nice in the platform as well is all of these blue boxes that you see across the different pages we're going to explore are helping users using plain English explain what's actually going on within this model training session. So again, talking about upskilling, this is a really great way of sort of learning by doing, and Dataiku gives you all of these explanations. And you can also just go ahead and hit this help button, which is going to be contextual help as you move into different screens inside of the platform. It's also going to recommend, for example, which courses help you get started to address some of these challenges you might find within the modeling section. We won't go into every single one of these screens, but just know that you have the flexibility here to determine everything about this particular model training session. And this is where I can change things like which hyperparameters am I optimizing for, what thresholds am I optimizing for. And this is where we start to dive deeper into how do we define what the best model for my use case is. Sometimes we have a bigger risk appetite, which means I would prefer to have a prediction that is addressing or assigning a churn risk to more customers than not. That means that at least, even if I'm wrong about my customer potentially churning, I can still address a bigger bucket of those and make sure that that doesn't impact my business as much. Sometimes you want to go the opposite route, and you might have less of a risk appetite. So we'd rather be more accurate with our predictions, even though that means missing out on some potential positives. So think false positives or true or false negatives. You might have a direction you would be leaning in there, depending on the use case you're solving for. I can also pick within here my algorithms that I want to test for every single one of the experiments that I'm running. I will be able to toggle on and off different algorithms. And if I want to get really specific here, I can always bring some custom Python modeling and incorporate it within this comparison. We'll go back to having ran those particular sessions. Once you run a session in the platform, you'll see all of the different results. These results are being measured on my area under the curve. And so I can dive into any one of these particular models. Let's see which model performed the best and get some explainability metrics out of it. Here I can see some model documentation. So Dataiku automates this for you, makes sure that we keep a log of what your training data was, what features were selected, so on and so forth. We can go into this what if analysis, which is a really neat way of understanding how the model is operating based on a hypothetical row of data, essentially. So I can play here with the different variables that are impacting my model output. Maybe I know, or I have a hunch here, that the older my customer, the less or the more likely they are to churn or not. And so I can test that hypothesis over here. I can see here how many, or what the marketing campaign that is, what type of impact that had on my model output. And you'll see here that the probabilities will change as I change each one of these variables. These are also aspects of the models that you can publish onto a dashboard. So you'll see here the ability to publish that into a Dataiku dashboard. That allows you to explain your model findings, or at least put some sort of explainability in the hands of your subject matter experts, your end users who might not be as data savvy as you are. I can also evaluate here what the feature importance was. So we talked about generating additional features. If you'll recall, we talked about the age example. You can see it's actually a pretty important portion of my model. So that's good to see that some of the work that we did is paying off here. And then you can play around with different explainability metrics, performance metrics. Those are all here, again, to help you document your findings, explain your findings, and these are all things that you can publish back to a dashboard. Finally, once we have a model that we like, we can go ahead and deploy this into the flow. In this particular case, we've already deployed it, so I'm going to go back to the flow, but this is where you can either update an existing model or deploy a brand new model. And what that gives me here is this final look where we have that training data that we generated together. We have then used that to train a model, and we've found the right model for our use case. We have deployed it onto the flow. And then from here, we can finally set up that last piece, which is scoring your input data. So one of the things that you'll see here is my scoring data is data that has never seen this model. This is now data we want to put the model to work on. And what that gives me as an output is a brand new data set that's being evaluated by my particular model. And we're going to see here what the actual prediction was. And then from here, you can imagine a lot of different use cases or uses for this data set. We can evaluate how we're doing in terms of potential churn risk. We can then take customers who are likely to churn and put them in a separate marketing pipeline, make sure that we send them the best offers that we have. There's really a lot of different options that you have, but this is how you then take this model and put it to work and generate that extra business value rather than simply doing some experiments on your local desktop. And that's it for the session here. Appreciate you joining How to Build Your First Model. We'll take any questions from here, and thanks again.